amazina nitwa Ezechiel Runesha, naturutse muri Congo, ndi umukongomani, niho navukiye, niho nakuriye, niho abavyeyi banje babaye ibihe byose. Murakoze.
Nange banyita nkundwa Emmę, naturutse Congo, niyo navukiye, niyo nakuriye, niho nashakiye.
Being a refugee in a country which isn't yours is hard, but we had no other option, so we had to live there.
We used to get help from the UNHCR. They used to provide food, but apart from that, they did nothing. And sometimes the food was insufficient. But because we were getting that help, we had to accept what they had to give. I got to know about Gahini Diocese through helping a sick student. He used to study at a school nearby the camp. One day he was sick, so I took him to the hospital, and then after, I took him home. I took care of him. Then after he was better, he went back to school. Then over the holidays, he went home. He invited me over to his family's house, and I got to know his father was the pastor at the Matare parish, and so that's how I got to be part of the Gahini Diocese, all through helping that boy. When I started working there, Bishop Manasseh was the secretary of the diocese, so I got to know him well. I was having some problems at the time, and because he was around, I found myself telling him everything. He was so open to me, and that's how we got to be friends. I got to be friends with his family too. When we reached Uganda, I found them a place to live, but then I went back to Rwanda to continue my work. I used to visit them every day I could to see how they were doing. The good thing was it wasn't that far. It used to take me about 5 hours to reach them. So whenever they told me that she had a problem, I would get a ticket and come to Rwanda to see her. Then she got better. I would go back to work. It was just moving back and forth, back and forth.
It was hard for me during that time because I didn't know what was wrong. I used to get dizzy and my heart used to beat really fast.
I remember one day around midnight, we were asleep and Emmę called me and said, "I feel like I'm dying." I didn't know what to do. I just got up and I started praying. I called my sister and her husband and they came over. We started praying and I told her she didn't need to worry because she was going to live. Around 5 or 6 in the morning, she felt like a person again. I really thank God that we went through all those days and we're still here. On July 10th of 2023, they had called her to the hospital because she was getting worse. But when we reached the hospital, they said, "You have to proceed and go to the United States so that she can get the treatment she deserves." That's how we learned we were moving.
I can't even express how happy I was because I'd waited so long. I had convinced myself, I'll get better when I get to the US. So when I learned we were coming to the US, I was so happy. I would look around at the life I was living then, not being able to help my family like I used to be able to. I couldn't do anything, I couldn't move. And it hurt me to see everything going on and that I couldn't do anything about it. So when I heard we were coming to the US, I was so happy. I thank God that He made this decision for us.
When I was still in the hospital, I called my brother in Uganda to get phone numbers of some friends and relatives living in the US, but they all live far away from North Carolina. But they started calling people who were in North Carolina, here in Greensboro, to tell them, there's some people from Africa, so if you're nearby, can you visit them? So that's how Pastor Jonathan got my number, and he came to see us at our hotel. In our culture, when we get to know each other, we introduce ourselves to each other and talk about our families. So when we were introducing each other, I got to know that Anastasia, Pastor Jonathan's wife, is my cousin. Her mom is my father's sister. That's how we got to know everyone, and that's how I got to get to Redeemer. The first week we were here, I went to Redeemer. There was a pastor visiting from Michigan named Reverend Masomo. I used to hear him preaching in Rwanda, but I had never met him in person. I felt that I really needed to go to church at that time and thank God for what he was doing. When I reached Redeemer for that first service, I was like any normal person going into a church for the first time. But when I got home, I told my family that it was a really good church. I felt like we didn't have to look any further than that church because it was the one that God had given us.
It was really a blessing for me to get to come to Redeemer, because I used to think in this country I would never get to go to church. I knew you usually needed a car to get to church here in the US, and we didn't have one, so I thought I would never get to go. So when I got to Redeemer, I was so happy to get to be there with my family.
Back in Africa, we had a wish we used to pray for every day. We used to ask God to prepare a life for us, a place to live in which would be nice for us. I thank God for the family we now have at Redeemer. This was a really big miracle for us because when we came here, it was like we were being welcomed as if we were family who had been here before. They welcomed us as if they knew us. We don't have enough time to talk about everyone, but Mac and Luann Arrington, I really take them as my parents spiritually and truly. There is no day that ends without them being here asking us, how is life? Or seeing what's not going well and helping to fix it. Here at Redeemer, we have parents, we have friends, we have sisters and brothers. I know that we have everything we need.
I really thank God that this was His plan and it came to be. I never thought life could be the way it is now, so I really thank God for answering our prayers, and I know it's His will for us to be here.
I really thank Redeemer for their loving heart, because if you didn't really have that loving heart, you wouldn't have done all this. But because of the love you have, you really did everything, and you're still doing it. I really thank God for you.